Welcome back to SportLab, where football meets insight. Today, we're diving into Wright Kelly and Rio Ferdinand's bold prediction for Arsenal's second leg against Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-finals. After that dominant 3-0 win at the Emirates, Arsenal are on the brink. But can they finish the job at the Bernabéu? Wright and Ferdinand think so, but with a warning. Let's break it all down.
So we're talking about the teams who are going to be in Champions League action in midweek. The big feel-good story around the Champions League is Arsenal, who are 3-0 lead against a 3-0 lead against the European champions, a 3-0 lead against the 15-time European champions. So that must mean that all Arsenal fans are feeling incredibly confident about going to the Bernabéu.
Why wouldn't you? You have to feel confident being 3-0
I was joking. Every Arsenal fan I speak to is terrified.
No, but the thing is, Kels, naturally you're terrified because we're talking about the winningest team in the competition and the players that are on show. But what I saw them the other day. You know, I watched them close. I watched them. I've watched Vinicius. I watched Rodrigo. I watched Mbappe. I watched the fact that Jude Bellingham's got to do so much work that if Arsenal can keep the pressure on them by making those players have to try and come back, which they won't want to do, then you will probably score again. But you know, it's Real Madrid. It's almost like you don't want to play Liverpool or Real Madrid in the latter stages of the Champions League, especially quarterfinals, because something happens, especially when you go to their ground. So I would never take it for granted, but I'd be very disappointed if we lost even to Real Madrid after the performance we put in the other day at the Emirates. So, yeah, I'm quite confident about it, but obviously I'm not...
Does the Brentford game and the late equaliser from Brentford and the kind of deflation of that, does that have any effect, or do you think the Arsenal players will be able to separate the two competitions?
Without a doubt, because you know what it means to them. Obviously, trying so hard with the Premier League and getting so close, it looks like Liverpool's going to do that now. But still in with a chance of the Champions League, that's where all their energy probably is now. Obviously, Forest not taking advantage of the fact that they could have caught Arsenal. It makes it even more comfortable for them. But at the same time, you know, all the energies in this game. And being 3-0 up is ideal. I was desperate that Real Madrid didn't score one. But if they score an early one over there, like anyone knows, right, you know, it's a whole different game.
They've never come back from 3-0 down before, Real Madrid.
And now they're playing us. And so, the first time they've ever come back...
The first answer was, yeah, why wouldn't you be confident? And now you've started talking yourself...
You have to be confident because you're 3-0 up. You have to be, but you're against Real Madrid, so you can't ignore that. I
think that's the bit
and Camavinga getting sent off at the end.
That's one of the worst you'll ever see at that level.
Exactly. Yeah.
At that level, to see something.
And Arsenal may struggle with goals in the Premier League, but Real Madrid have got no defenders left. Rudiger's the only one standing, I think, at the end of that. So it's looking really good for Arsenal in the Champions League. It's whether that kind of has a knock on to the Premier League and vice versa.
Honestly, Kels, I don't think so, because I just try to picture myself in there, in the predicament that they're in now, where they are in the league and everything, and I wouldn't be thinking about anything else other than that game now and getting through that game.
You're going to Real Madrid, like you just as a player, like you just can't wait for that. I think there would have been some residual disappointment from the weekend, but I think you would quite quickly change your mind, because you're going, you know what, we had the buzzer through the week. I mean, Declan Rice must just, I would just love to be in his head for a second, just like that feeling.
You know what would have been good with that though, Rachel? Like you mentioned me over about the chances. Is Declan scored 2 out-of-this-world free kicks, but we created other chances where I'd like to have seen us score them in open play. Yeah. Because you don't want to feel like, oh, if we need somebody to score another 2 worldies just to keep ourselves in it. So you're hoping, Kels, that we can play like we did, create chances and then try and take them this time.
Talking about an early goal changing the whole complexion of games, Villa Park with a 3-1 deficit for Aston Villa against Paris Saint-Germain, who are a very different Paris Saint-Germain from the early stages of the Champions League, from the league phase, which they almost didn't even qualify out of. Now found themselves in the knockout stages, look like a different team altogether. 3-1 to Paris Saint-Germain at Villa Park. But if Villa can get an early goal, is there a way back for them?
There's certainly a way back. I've actually got a ticket.
You're hoping there is.
I see the fans are going to play a massive part. I'd love Villa to score in the first 10-15 minutes, Kels, because then I feel that we might see that PSG, what we saw earlier on against Arsenal. But it's going to take a massive effort from everybody there.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things I think about the mindset of, do I think Villa can score 2 goals? Absolutely. But it's, can you stop them scoring another? And so I think it'll be a great game. I think at Villa Park, the Villa will go into that feeling confident because it's at home. Pressure in that in the way that a lot of people think they're out of it, and I think as a player as well, sometimes you enjoy that when people think you don't really have a chance. So sometimes that's a nice feeling because you think pressure's off, but we back ourselves. Yeah. Can we get a goal? They know they can. They did that away from home. They scored first. You do that, you start asking questions because PSG were a different team at the start. And some of those players that have come in and have changed it for them are young players too. So can you just ask them a few questions?
That's
what have you got away from home? Not in your comfort zone. And you got to try and lean into that.
See, Champions League games feel like something that you can really look forward to, that can add something to the Premier League season. And then you've got teams like Tottenham and Manchester United, where their whole season, it feels like, is resting on what they can do in the Europa League. And they're both, level pegging 1-1 and 2-2 in their respective fixtures. And who knows? Who knows what could happen? It doesn't feel hyperbolic to say what happens next season could rest on what happens in these next 2 games for them.
100%. You look at both of them where they're in the league, and there's no reason for them to be in those positions. There's no reason at all. And for United in particular, this could be the biggest game they've had in recent times. The backdrop of not getting through this could be very, very, very stark to where they want to be. There's been a lot of talk of, takeover and the direction we're going to go in, but this is not where Manchester United should be. So it's a massive game for them. And, the performances leading up to this have not been great. You're coming off a 4-1 defeat to Newcastle. In Spurs' example as well, it's exactly the same thing. Spurs should not be where they are in the Premier League table. They should never be there. 17 losses should never happen in a league campaign for Spurs. So they're both hoping that this one trophy can change the narrative and they can walk away saying that at least we got this. And both of them can't win it. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets closest or if they actually manage to progress from this tie.
I was speaking to Man United, some Man United fans, and they were talking about if they won the Europa League and finished where they are, would it be considered a good season? And one said, no, it wouldn't be. And that is obviously off of what we know that Man United were capable of, their history. But I would probably know that there's so much work to be done at Man United. You have to say that's a successful season because it's so bad.
I don't think it's a successful season. I think it saves face.
It saves face. I think
it's even better. You can say
it saves
at least
face.
we're still in Europe next year.
Yes,
finishing in the bottom half of the table, your lowest Premier League finish ever, points tally ever, with nothing to look forward to next season, just domestic games. Could be very spooky.
So even if they qualify for the Champions League, it's what they do in the Champions League next season.
Exactly.
And then if they don't qualify for the Champions League, is there then pressure already on the new owners because they're already cutting costs at the club, and then there isn't going to be Champions League money coming in because it's certainly not coming in through the league. It has to come in through the Europa League.
Through the Europa League, and you look at Man United, and they've got the players that, especially in those kind, they can raise their game for some reason, and they can win those games. That's why they're at this stage of the competition. Tottenham, I don't know what's happening there in respects of even if they do go on to win it, which I don't think they can. You just feel like there's so much going on there at Spurs. We're seeing all the stuff that's going on with their manager.
And yet Spurs, listen, I know it was a 1-1 draw, but they certainly created the chances to win that one. Manchester United conceded that late goal, a couple of Onana errors in that. He was dropped for the game at the weekend against Newcastle, or rested. He's had other stuff going on in his personal life as well. And so that I think that giving him a little bit of space, he wasn't in the squad in order, Ruben Amorim said, to be fit for this game in the Europa League on Thursday night. And that's all he wanted to talk about after the defeat by Newcastle. All Amorim said was Thursday. We're looking ahead to the game against Lyon on Thursday.
I just hope it's not put too much pressure on them in a weird sense because, the league is essentially a write-off. But United do have young players. They brought in a young Harry to play in their game as well on the weekend. You just hope that now that because of Onana's comments before the first leg and what happened, now come to the second leg, that it doesn't become a pressure point where they crumble underneath it because the whole season has been that. They've just not managed to rise to the occasion when they need to. So
are you saying he's going to play Onana in that game? He's rested him for that game, would you say?
Well, I mean, why would if you drop him for both?
He's saying it is just for one game.
Yeah.
That's what Amorim has said. But we will see in midweek. We'll see, as Ruben Amorim kept saying after the defeat by Newcastle. We'll see on Thursday. Is what he kept saying. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you, Mayowa. Wrighty and I will be back next week when there could be a whole different complexion on that race for European football next season.
So on the weekend's action, let's head off to the Emirates. Saturday night, Arsenal 1, Brentford 1. Steve Warnock, it feels a little bit difficult to analyse this game because you can't help but feel it didn't really matter for Arsenal. And I know that they will say they're still fighting until it's impossible against Liverpool, but even Mikel Arteta's team selection probably reflected they've got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? I wonder whether Mikel Arteta might look back in a few weeks and think, I wonder if I'd have played a stronger team against Everton and then also against Brentford and tried to put a little bit more pressure on Liverpool. However, he's decided that the Champions League is the route he wants to take and felt that the Premier League was out of his grasp or out the team's grasp. And would that result against Real Madrid have happened in midweek had he had not rested certain players? So I understand both sides of it completely, but looking at this game, it's all eyes on going to the Bernabéu and trying to make sure that they get that result they need.
I think the point is on that, though, that you just said, could they have put pressure on Liverpool? They could have, but ultimately there's a very, very high percentage chance that it wouldn't have changed what happens come the last day of the season and where the trophies.
Possibly not, but what we saw yesterday at the Golf, pressure gets to everyone, and if you put pressure on Liverpool and you get closer and you can put a little bit more. So if Arsenal had beaten Everton, and we're going down a hypothetical route here, but if they'd have beaten Everton and Liverpool then lose to Fulham, come this game, they then win this game and put pressure on Liverpool going into the West Ham game. The pressure in that game for Liverpool is completely different. So then you might see mistakes start to happen and creep in, and then you might see a different outcome in the game. Everything is fine when we look back at it in paper and go, yeah, but Liverpool won that game. Yeah, but you've changed the situation completely. You've changed the pressure of what's going into that game. So there is that side of things as well.
Do you want to add anything on what we saw in the Golf last night, Sue, or we carry on talking about Arsenal, shall we?
Yeah, carry on talking about Arsenal.
OK, fine. But one of the things, again, for a bit of sympathy towards Mikel Arteta, is that we've probably spent 2 seasons saying you've got to try and give Bukayo Saka a breather, you've got to try and give Martin Odegaard or Declan Rice a rest, that this feels sensible, that you know, Wednesday night against Real Madrid is absolutely... Well, I've seen we've said it a load of times this morning, but this is their season. But it is again for Arsenal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And like Stephen said there, before the Everton game, there was a little bit of criticism that he rotated players and they were saying, oh, well, with Liverpool dropping points, was that a chance to actually really put the pressure on them? And then they go and produce that performance midweek and everyone was like, oh, OK. And it's a similar sort of thing. You know, they rotated players, Saka coming back from injury, how key he is. So to keep him fit and making sure that he's available for those big games, similar to Odegaard. And you want all your key players fit and available. And I think Mikel Arteta's just trying to balance that. So, of course, they want to win every game in the Premier League, and you want to go into that Champions League game in good form. But the fact that they got the draw, they were able to rotate, they know exactly what they need to do midweek, you can understand why he's done it.
It's incredible football, isn't it? Because when you think to halfway through the season, everyone had Liverpool as favourites to win the Champions League, thought they'd win everything. Everyone said Paris Saint-Germain won't do anything. They're arguably the best team in the competition. Arsenal, they felt, would win the league. And now they're going down the different route. And suddenly, Arsenal are now favourites to win the Champions League because of that win against Real Madrid.
Are they your favourites?
No, I still think Paris Saint-Germain are the team to beat. And I also think Barcelona are the team to beat as well. I think they'll be, with their forward three and the way that they play. The only thing is they're a little bit more vulnerable. However, I'm going to put a case forward to everyone here. I would not...
I don't think Dortmund are going to win it. We can maybe say that.
No, but I would not want to play Inter Milan. Incredible at the back, organised, defensively solid, in the shape where they sit in, but also got goals in the team as well. So it's going to be brilliant to watch. But Arsenal have put themselves right in the mix with that result in the first leg.
Is the important thing for the second leg, Sue, then, that Arsenal play the game and not Real Madrid's reputation of what they can do in second legs particularly?
Yeah, because I think any other team, if Arsenal would go in to play them 3-0 up, you'd go, pretty much they're through, aren't they? But I just think because it's Real Madrid and because the history that they've got in the tournament, because of the players, the manager that they've got, you always think, oh, if they get an early goal, what will happen then, the pressure and things like that. But I just think Arsenal, we know that they can be defensively solid and resilient. And, you know, I know obviously missing Gabriel, but they've still got a really good structure off the ball. So you think, keep it tight, keep it compact, work really hard. You know you've got the quality, whether it's through set pieces or whether it's through Saka or Martinelli, whoever's playing in those attacking areas. You know that Real Madrid are going to have to come and they're going to have to go for it. So it will leave spaces on the counter. So it's just how do you approach it, isn't it? That's the
interesting thing, because what they've done is they've gone at Real Madrid and absolutely battered them. Yeah. And it's like, well, what are you going to do in the second leg? Sit back. But that's the mindset, isn't it? We're away from home, so we're going to protect the lead. Often if you sit back and try and protect something, you invite that pressure constantly onto you. But then if you do go a little bit, right, we're going out at them, you leave spaces at the back. But Real Madrid didn't create anything within the game. I think there was an early opportunity for Mbappe when Kivior sort of made a mistake, wasn't there? But apart from that, there wasn't much else within the game that Arsenal were particularly worried about.
Yeah, and that is, I guess, the balancing act, isn't it, that Arsenal have, in that you will know, because you've played in football games, both of you, about momentum, and that if you start in your bunker, it becomes very hard to suddenly clamber out and try and create chances. Now, the other way of looking at it on Wednesday is that Mikel Arteta could say, if we score first, it is done.
And that's the hard thing, isn't it? But I think what you've got to do is, and this is also the difficult situation where, as a manager, you've got to let your players, or hope your players, buy into exactly what your game plan is. So what is it you're going to sell to the players? Is it, we're going to go and kill this game off, and some of the players go, oh, hang about, that leaves spaces for them. Then the other players go, well, we quite like to sit in, and everyone's going, yeah, but you're inviting Real Madrid onto us. So again, you're back to that argument of what you do. But from Arsenal's point of view, they've got to know they can hurt Real Madrid, and they know they can now. My only point is, from the game, is Arsenal might not be clinical enough or aren't clinical enough. So when you think back to that result, we go, incredible. You look at it on paper, 3-0, 2 wonder goals, 2 amazing free kicks. Arsenal missed so many chances in the game. At times they are not clinical enough, and they're going to have to be clinical on the night. With maybe it's one opportunity they get, they might have to take that.
But that is when Stephen was there talking, Sue, about the mentality and worrying that if you attack, you leave in spaces behind. But actually, if you're an elite player, for example, someone like Saka should be saying, give me the ball and I'll hurt them. And if I hurt them once, it could be tie over. And that's, I guess, when the biggest of players step up on nights like that, they don't go back into their shell, even if they're playing Real Madrid away.
No, you're right. And Saka is one of those sort of players, isn't he? I think his target was to get back for that Real Madrid game. And you could see in his press conference before the game, he had a real belief about it. You know, he was like, we can go and we can be successful. He believes in his ability. He believes in the team's ability. And you think he is a player that will shine. We obviously saw Declan Rice step up and be that player in the first leg. But they've got players that can do that. I know, obviously, Marino's playing in, you know, an unfamiliar role in that number 9 role. He's actually doing a really good job. You know, he's doing the best job that he can. Obviously, it's, you know, that's another debate on who they're going to bring in that position. But he's that focal point. He works really hard. He's trying to get better in that position. So they've certainly got players that can cause Real Madrid problems. They've got that belief because they've already done it. And they've got that defensive resilience, if you like. So it's just how they're going to approach it. It's going to be so fascinating, I think, to watch that.
I think the great thing is when you watch the game back from the previous leg is how they flooded the midfield, how organised they were in that midfield by dropping Marino back into that position. Yeah. Because what you essentially want to do is you don't want the midfielders being creative and feeding Vinicius Junior, Mbappe and Rodrigo. You've got to nullify that threat and stop those balls going in there. That's what they did so well the other day, was had so much control in that middle that they looked comfortable in and out of possession. And that's where you've got to look at the team and go, are they comfortable out of possession? And Arsenal are one of those teams that are.
But the other point I made about the midfield yesterday, Sue, we had Lee Hendry and Darren Ambrose, 2 midfielders on Soccer Sunday, is that the energy as well, that Declan Rice, Partey in the first might not be fit for the second leg, but for all his qualities, Luka Modric is getting old and is not very mobile. And by flooding it, as Steven said, you make Bellingham come backwards, whereas he actually wants to go the other way.
Of course he does, and we know that they've got options in there, that they can change that midfield area. But of course, Modric, we know the qualities that he's got on the ball. But yeah, the legs in midfield of Arsenal, like you said, the way that they flooded that area was a key reason why they went on and won the game. So, yeah, it was certainly a balancing act for Mikel Arteta in terms of resting players, making sure that they have enough game time so that they're ready. And it is just the game plan and seeing how you get over that line. Because, like I say, any other game, any other team that you're playing, when you're 3-0 up, you would say, oh, well, Arsenal are through to the next round. It's just because it's Real Madrid. That's why we're all a little bit too
Arsenal blew away
cautious to
Real
say
Madrid in the first leg, a performance for the ages. Declan Rice lit up the night with 2 world-class free kicks, and Mikel Merino added a third to leave the Gunners with a massive advantage. But as Mikel Arteta said post-match, it's only half-time. Rio Ferdinand echoed that message on his latest podcast. He backs Arsenal to go through, but he's seen too much magic from Madrid to call it over just yet. If Madrid score first and there's around half an hour to play, rah. My bum's gonna be speaking for you lot. Rio joked, but he wasn't laughing when talking about Madrid's threat. He pointed out how disjointed the Spanish giants looked at the Emirates. The balance wasn't there. They've been conceding too many. But Real Madrid in Europe, they're a different beast, and Rio knows it. That club is mystic, he said. If Arsenal go behind, it could be a different story. Still, Rio is backing Arteta's side to get the job done, and believes the key will be scoring in Madrid. If we score, they've got to get 4. When have we conceded 5? He imagined Arteta telling the squad. Rio's biggest question is tactical. Will Arteta sit deep and protect? Or go for it and kill the tie? He finished with a reminder of what's at stake for Arsenal. They're in the moment of proving they belong on the big stage. That 3-0 win. Amazing, but if they go out now, that game's just a DVD. That's it. So, the stage is set. Bernabéu. Real Madrid. One final test. Rio Ferdinand believes Arsenal will pass it, but only if they stay brave, stay sharp, and maybe score first. What do you think? Will Arsenal finish the job, or will Madrid work the European magic again? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because we'll be right here breaking down the second leg, no matter how it ends. This is SportLab, where football speaks louder. See you next time.